What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and you guys absolutely loved this video where we took home league default rankings from ESPN, Sleeper, and Yahoo and compared them versus high stakes ADP to find the best value in every round of your draft. The issue is these home league sites are catching up, and this video is kind of outdated. Hats off to ESPN. They have moved up Trevon Henderson from the 60s to the 40s, and even a guy like Bill Krosky Merritt, with all the Brian Robinson news going on here, they moved from pretty much unranked to pick 120. The good news for you is that there are still players your league mates are sleeping on, so today we are going to talk through the 13 values that your friends are overlooking in 2025 fantasy football drafts. I know a lot of you guys have drafts coming up this weekend. You're looking for players to target, so this is going to be the video for you. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and let's talk about the setup for this video. Now, I had a subscriber help me build a tool for you guys where everything we talked about in that old video is now updated. We still have the high stakes ADP updating every day, ESPN, Sleeper, Yahoo, all of that good stuff, value across the board. And the link to this website is down below in the comments for you guys to use. But it'd be a little bit stale to just run that back as an updated version. You guys now have access to this tool. So what we're going to do is find the players I'm higher on than these home league sites using my own rankings versus the default rankings on ESPN, Sleeper, and Yahoo. As you can see, our first player here is CeeDee Lamb. And I promise we're going to get deeper. I just wanted to mention CeeDee Lamb here and show you guys what this graphic is. We have, of course, the player, my ranking. The consensus is the average of Sleeper, ESPN, and Yahoo. Of course, across all those sites, we have the value. So how much higher or lower on each of these players am I versus where they are ranked on your home league website. The thing is here, CeeDee Lamb is my 103, and he across the board is the 106. Now, I'm not saying he's going to get to you at the 106, but if there's a chance, that's an absolute smash. I'd be willing to even put CeeDee Lamb as high as my 102 in a wide receiver hungry format. You know, 3 wide receivers, 1 flex, a league where you know wide receivers are going to fly off the board. CeeDee Lamb is a really good pick. I think it's almost forgotten about that Ja'Marr Chase, yes, had a triple crown. It's one of the weaker triple crowns in recent memory. He had about 23.7 points per game last year. That's what CeeDee Lamb had in 2023. And if you look at points per game over the last 2 seasons combined, so over the last 30 or so games for both CeeDee Lamb and Ja'Marr Chase, CeeDee Lamb is up there, 20.8 points per game, the wide receiver 1 overall over the last 2 seasons. Dak Prescott is back. This defense isn't that good. I think that it wouldn't shock me if CeeDee Lamb was the wide receiver 1 overall this season. You can get him as late as the 106 on these websites, and then you can pair him with like 2 back-to-back running backs if you'd like to as well in round 2 and round 3. Now, getting deeper than that, we have Kenneth Walker. You guys know I love Kenneth Walker. He is my 30th ranked player, somebody I'm taking in the middle to late third, and you can get him outside of the top 3 rounds across Sleeper, ESPN, and Yahoo. Now, I will say this isn't a player take video. I'll kind of give you the cliff notes of why I like each of these players so much. But with Kenneth Walker, he's somebody that breaks charts. In terms of tackles avoided per carry, he is an absolute monster. And people forget, last year, weeks 1 through 7, he had a better points per game than Saquon as the RB2 in points per game. And then he was also the RB7 in points per game before his week 13 injury. Now, of course, the big holdup with him and why he's discounted is the injury concerns. But I want to invest in this Clint Kubiak offense. Of course, this is just preseason, as Ian Hartitz points out here, but the Seahawks running backs rushing yards before contact per carry. So essentially, what is their offensive line and scheme getting for them on each play? 30th in 2024, so far in the 2025 season or preseason, 4th. That's at least a decent sign, where George Holani is out there looking like an absolute monster. And that also brings me to his backfield mate, where if you don't like Kenneth Walker, I like both of these guys. Again, I just really like the rushing environment. I think that they're going to run the ball a ton, play defense. This Kubiak scheme is really fun. And Charbonnet is ranked as my 90th ranked player, and he's outside of the top 100 across the board. And to me, he is the perfect upside running back you put in your RB room, whether it's a hero RB build or if you're just adding depth to your team. He is a really solid pick because we know Kenneth Walker has had injuries in the past. He's had a foot issue all offseason. And Charbonnet, in 8 career games without Kenneth Walker to this point, has averaged 17.7 points per game. Those are RB1 numbers. And there is 100% a chance that he just straight up, from getting reps and looking better on the field, beats out Kenneth Walker over an entire season. So he has multiple paths to upside. And again, a rushing offense I want to be betting on. Then our fourth target here that I am higher on than consensus is Trevon Henderson, in parentheses still. I didn't want to double dip too much on the first video, but these home league sites haven't adjusted enough. Yes, ESPN has him 44th ranked overall, but Sleeper's still at 60, Yahoo's at 56, and on my rankings, he's my 33rd ranked player at the 3-4 turn. And if you guys are watching every night, we do these drafts on stream. Sharp leagues, high stakes leagues are taking him as high as 301. This is Dwayne McFarland and Ian Hartitz here, who I have a lot of respect for. They work over at Fantasy Life. We actually got into a draft room with them last night. You can see I was from the 106. They draft from the 101. They take Trevon Henderson at the 301 here, and it's really not that crazy. I've seen Trevon Henderson go off the board at the 301 numerous times. He is a third-round surefire pick in Sharp leagues. This was $300 on the line, and Dwayne McFarland kind of defends his pick here, saying he's getting lots of questions about Trevon Henderson. Will he be in a rotation? Yes. So it's going to be a committee with Ramondre Stevenson, but he has what we're looking for in terms of his profile, where why do you rank him so high? He doesn't need a full-time role. He can be kind of what we've seen with Achane and Kamara. He said in his ceiling floor model, where he has his own projections across the board, he said a 20-plus point per game ceiling is within his range of outcomes, even with giving Stevenson more carries in a split that gets closer as the year goes on. Essentially, what Henderson is he is one of these archetypes like a Achane, Jahmyr Gibbs style runner, where he doesn't need to have 1,000-plus rushing yards. He just needs to be explosive and catching passes, which I think that's what he is going to be in this offense. He had 6 routes to 3 routes in terms of the week 1 preseason usage versus Ramondre Stevenson. He right now is the passing down back. That is huge. He's explosive. He had a 7.1 yards per carry last year for Ohio State, which is nuts. And he was one of 3 running backs in this class with a 10% breakaway run rate over his entire career. I like betting on Drake May's upside. I like betting on this offensive line that just got Will Campbell in the draft. I think it's completely wheels up for Trevon Henderson. Again, at that 3-4 turn, I am taking him there a bunch. And he is somebody in a home league that, yes, he might be 44th on ESPN or 60th on Sleeper, but the cat is out of the bag with Henderson. So for me, I think as soon as it gets to the 4th round, that's when you need to be taking Henderson. And even as early as the late 3rd in a home league setup. Our 5th mispriced player here is George Pickens. I have him at the 4-5 turn, but consensus with Sleeper and ESPN has him as a 5-6 turn pick. Yahoo's a little bit more sharper when it comes to Pickens, but I am all over him. Similar to CeeDee Lamb, I just really like this passing offense. Mike Clay has them projected for 5th in completions, 7th in yards, 7th in touchdowns, 6th in pass attempts. It's going to be a high volume, high efficiency, high touchdown total passing offense with a pretty rough-looking defense. They play in a dome. On top of that, the run game is non-existent. And to me, Pickens is a discounted T. Higgins, where if you look at his PFF grade, targets per out run, first downs per out run, yards per out run, they look about the same as other top-flight wide receiver 2s like Devontae Smith and T. Higgins. And if you look at his reception perception from Matt Harmon here, 74th percentile versus man coverage, 83rd percentile win rate versus press, making him a really strong outside X-receiver contested catch guy that I think is going to complement CeeDee Lamb very, very well. You can get essentially, again, a discounted T. Higgins at the 5-6 turn. Then we'll talk about, to be honest with you, somebody that should be moving up just like Henderson. We have RJ Harvey. I have him at the 4-5 turn as the 47th ranked player. He is across the board, outside the top 50 picks. Yahoo, again, Yahoo's kind of the sharpest site that I've seen across the board here. ESPN outside the top 70, Sleeper outside the top 60. I'd take him as high as the 4th round if I needed a running back. To me, there's a pretty big tier break after him, where once you're done with RJ Harvey, right, I assume Hubbard, Kamara, James Conner are all off the board, and then you're getting to your Tony Pollard and David Montgomery and Isaiah Pacheco, and those guys are fine, but a lot of the times in home leagues, that's where a lot of those receivers are going, right? That's where George Pickens is going to go, so I'd really rather get Harvey in the 4th and then come around in the 5th and start hammering wide receivers. And with RJ Harvey, there is some CEH downside. I will acknowledge that, right, where we're getting all swept up in Sean Payton handpicking this running back. You can see here from Scott Barrett, top 6 finishes in 10 of 12 seasons from 2011 to 2023 in terms of fantasy points per game for his running backs on his team. He uses the running backs a ton, he targets them a ton, and he handpicked RJ Harvey in the same way that he handpicked Alvin Kamara, Reggie Bush, and Mark Ingram with day 1 and 2 draft capital. But I say CEH because it was a similar idea with Andy Reid, who handpicked Kareem Hunt and Brian Westbrook and LaShawn McCoy, and then CEH was bad. The thing is that CEH had to pay a 1-2 turn pick even in home leagues back then, and I believe that was 2021. RJ Harvey in the 4th round, if he's not a hit, he's not going to sink your team, but I think the upside is absolutely there. This is a 14th scoring offense by Vegas, the 4th best offensive line by Establish the Run. Bo Nix was 3rd in terms of rate of targets behind the line of scrimmage, and he's a very fun, explosive playmaking profile where he's 5'8", 205 pounds, looks kind of similar to Aaron Jones in terms of 4.4 speed, 38-inch vertical, 10-foot broad jump, so explosive, straight line speed. And among the day and 1-2 running backs drafted, so that's the top 6 from this year, he is 2nd in missed tackles forced per touch, 1st in chunk rate, 1st in explosive run rate, 2nd in elusiveness rating, 2nd in receiving fantasy points per snap. He's a monster. He's elusive. He's explosive. He's athletic. He catches passes. He gets draft capital. He's tied to Sean Payton. I really like RJ Harvey, especially, again, he's fallen to like the 5th, 6th round on Sleeper and ESPN. Then we're going to get to Emeka Egbuka with parentheses of still. This is from the first video, but I just want to scream at the top of my lungs about Emeka Egbuka. I've been talking about him all offseason. Sadly, everyone is caught up because of the Chris Godwin injury and the Jalen McMillan injury, and now it just wheels all the way up. But I have him ranked as my 5'12", 60th overall. He is going out to the top 100 picks on Sleeper, 98th on ESPN. I mean, it's nonsense across the board, but what I do want to say is everybody's screaming about Egbuka. So don't get cute. Don't be like, oh, well, I can wait until the 9th round to get Egbuka. I have in my rankings right now, you can get my draft guide. I have target rounds for every player, which, of course, you can find that over on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. I have links in the description and the comment section down below. But I have target rounds for every player. So essentially what happens is that you see a player that you like, and you can see their target round, and that's essentially me giving you the green light. Okay, take him here. For Egbuka, for a while, it was 8th round, and then it was 7th round, but I think the cat's out of the bag to the point where if you find yourself on the clock in the 6th round, just take Egbuka. Don't get cute. This is somebody, and I hate to even put this out there to add to the hype, but man, this is somebody where when we look back, again, I don't want to add to the hype. This is a super strong prospect. My wide receiver 2 in my prospect model from the Dynasty content we did back in the spring and winter. We had a clip here where Mike Evans went to the side in practice. One day, he just like took off or whatever. He's a veteran. It makes a ton of sense. I'm not scared off of Mike Evans. I've moved him up since then. But essentially, Baker says that Egbuka can play all 3 wide receiver spots and filled in at X for Mike Evans for a day. And I do start to get this feeling that we oftentimes see these wide receivers in all-time receiver rooms, right? When you think of Justin Jefferson next to Jamar Chase, when you think of Emeka Egbuka next to Jeremiah Smith or Marvin Harrison or Olave and Garrett Wilson, and you think about Brian Thomas next to Malik Neighbors, that sometimes these guys don't get to fully shine within an offense with these monster receiver prospects, and they get kind of pigeonholed into a role. I'm starting to get the feeling that maybe Emeka Egbuka is not a slot-only playmaker like he was in college. What if he can play on the outside? He had an 80th percentile plus win rate versus press according to reception perception. If he can play all over the formation, we're talking about somebody like, I truly do believe like Brian Thomas Jr., Justin Jefferson is in his range of outcomes to finish as like a wide receiver 1 in points per game this year. I think he really can be that good. Now, I did want to add as well with the Patreon, I will have this spreadsheet where I talk through or where I charted out my rankings versus consensus. Sadly, that will also be on the Patreon. Those are my rankings. If you're on the Patreon, look out for that. I will post that probably sometime tonight. After that, let's talk about Matthew Golden as my 8th target here. I will say, yes, a lot of these guys are rookies, but when we look over the last 2 years in terms of league winners, about a quarter of them have been rookies. And I've gotten this comment a ton, Ron, you're in love with the rookies. Last year was an outlier class. It really wasn't. When you look at it, yes, last year we had Bucky Irving, Brock Bowers, Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, but the year before that, we still had Sam Laporta, Puka Nacua, Jaden Daniels, Devon Achane, CJ Stroud. I might have screwed that up at one point, but you get what I'm saying. Like, most rookie classes have studs, and we've seen over the last 2 years, about a quarter of the league winners in your league are rookies. And then on top of that, you can see the ADP. Brian Thomas in sharp leagues last year was going around pick 70. The ADP for him on ESPN last year was 121. So a lot of the times, these rookies are league winners in home leagues, and they're also going way too cheap because a lot of the guys who are casuals in these home leagues, they're not following the draft and keeping up with guys that are coming out of school, and they're much more concerned about the guys in their prime, and that's where you can get huge values. And to me, that's where Matthew Golden, Emeka Egbuka, Trevon Henderson, RJ Harvey, all these guys fall into that bucket. And with Matthew Golden, he has the chance to be the wide receiver 1 on a team that is projected for the 11th most points by Vegas this year. Jaden Reed is still limping around with his walking boot. Romeo Doubs has been reported as like a cut/trade candidate. Dontavion Wicks is Dontavion Wicks at this point. Matthew Golden, they drafted him in the first round. He's somebody who made plays for Texas last year. I wasn't in love with him as a prospect, but I'm open to him being pretty good. And at this price, I have him ranked 69th. Across the board, outside of ESPN, he is dirt cheap. Now, I will say, if you miss out on the sexy rookies and you find yourself needing a flex piece wide receiver, I think Jennings in round 9-10 is about right. I have him 76th overall. Consensus has him 95th overall, so about a round higher than me. And with Jawan Jennings, he is dealing with a hamstring injury, or dealing with a lower body injury is what I'll say, but also a contract dispute. So like also an injury, but also a contract dispute. So who knows what's going on there. I think he plays week 1 and that he'll be fine. But he was good last year, and he finds himself in a good San Francisco offense. Jawan Jennings in 2024 was the wide receiver 25 in points per game, wide receiver 16 in yards per outrun, wide receiver 14 in first downs per outrun, wide receiver 12 in targets per outrun, wide receiver 16 in PFF grade, and you can get him. I had wide receiver 34 here, but I think by consensus, he's probably outside the top 40 wide receivers in your home league. So I'm buying that all day. Now, this one was shocking to me, but ETN is really cheap. And you guys know I've been screaming at the top of my lungs about Bajal Tuin, but I kind of like taking stabs on this backfield in general. I like this Liam Cohen offense. I have ETN as my 88th ranked player. You can get him out to the top 110 picks on Yahoo and ESPN. To me, that's nuts. Like, there's 100% a scenario. As much as I love Tuin as a lottery ticket dart throw, Travis Etienne in like the 8th, 9th round could just simply be the lead back of a fun offense. He was the RB7 in points per game in 2023. It wouldn't be shocking for him to be an RB1 in this offense, be the lead guy, get the passing down work. He went to Clemson with Trevor Lawrence. You can kind of get some shower narrative stuff there. After the top 100 picks for a running back in consensus that could just be the lead RB on his team, to me is pretty shocking. And then we will get to Bill Krosky Merritt. Now, this is a hot topic. Brian Robinson gets traded here. And I will say before we get into this, because I assume a lot of you guys are going to skip to this part of the video, all I ask is that if you enjoy this content, make sure you're subscribed. Only about half of you guys are subscribed right now. It's August. We're grinding. We're posting videos. We're streaming every night. Just make sure you're subscribed. I know a lot of you guys might be watching and I show up in your recommended or your home feed and you swore you were subscribed. Just go check. Make sure you're subscribed. It costs $0. Leave a like as well. But let's talk about Bill Krosky Merritt. And honestly, we can kind of cover the entire thing. Right now, I have him ranked 101st in my rankings. That's still way ahead of consensus, even where ESPN has him. Brian Robinson gets traded to San Francisco for a 6th-round pick. And to me, he's purely a handcuff. I think that this says more about Isaac Guerendo and Jordan James, the 2 backup running backs, than it does about McCaffrey. They want insurance here. I think at this point, you trade a 6th-rounder, that's literally nothing. I'm not moving Christian McCaffrey. I'm also not moving the Washington running backs. I was already operating under the assumption that Brian Robinson was getting cut or traded. So I already had JCM 101st ranked overall. I've already moved up Austin Eckler. I've already moved up Chris Rodriguez. I think the only guy who gets nuked here is Brian Robinson. Again, he's like essentially wherever you were drafting Isaac Guerendo is I think where you should be drafting Brian Robinson now. And JCM, to me, I now have him ranked around where J.K. Dobbins and Zach Charbonnet are, where you're talking through murky backfields where you don't feel great about starting him week 1. But at this point, the drumbeat is so loud. Like, it's one thing to get rave reviews in camp. It's another to get such a loud drumbeat that Brian Robinson gets completely discarded because of it. Now, if you want to say, oh, well, this says maybe more about Eckler or more about Chris Rodriguez, maybe. But JCM has gotten so much buzz here that to me, he's the RB1 for Washington in terms of fantasy football. He could be the same upside that you were drafting Brian Robinson for as the lead back with the goal line role in a good offense in Washington. And his profile is so weird that I just want to bet into the upside of it, where I think that he gave his jersey to a teammate at Alabama State, and then he wore it, and then it killed his eligibility at his final year for Arizona. So he gets drafted despite only playing 1 game last year. His profile is weird. Went to like Alabama State, and then New Mexico, and then Arizona, and then again the eligibility issue. So he is as mystery box as it gets, and to me, that's a profile worth leaning into and not being like, oh, he sucks. Now, after that, we have just some late dart throws. Trevor Lawrence gets no disrespect, or he gets no respect. Yahoo, again, one of the sharper sites to draft out there. So I will say, if you're drafting with your home league buddies, like, try and get them. Honestly, Sleeper's sleeping right now. Maybe Sleeper has an update they'll roll out in terms of ADP, but Sleeper is, in my opinion, I think that Sleeper is the softest site across the board here. 181st for Trevor Lawrence on a site where quarterbacks get pushed up. They have Purdy in like the 80s or whatever, and I like Purdy. But Trevor Lawrence, he's my 125th ranked player. He's 160th by consensus. And when you just sort my rankings of the quarterbacks and look at consensus, I have him in the same tier as like Caleb Williams through Jared Goff. All these guys are about the same for me. I don't know how Justin Herbert is ranked 100th by consensus and then Trevor Lawrence 160th. To me, they're very similar bets. I like Trevor Lawrence. He was the QB 13 and QB 12 in 2022 and 2023. He gets Liam Cohen. He gets year 2 Brian Thomas. He gets Travis Hunter. He also, with Liam Cohen got Baker Mayfield to set a career high in rushing yards. What if we see that for Trevor Lawrence and he has a higher rushing ceiling as well? So for me, he is the perfect, like, last round quarterback dart throw. If you miss out on the elite ones and you got to go 2 quarterbacks, let's say that's like Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, I think that's absolutely fine. And then we will talk about, this is just a deep sleeper here, but I really think that he benefits a ton. Ollie Gordon here, he's my 170th ranked player, but after the Brian Robinson move, I think I'm going to move him up to like the 150s here. Jalen Wright's banged up. Devon Achan's banged up. Brian Robinson was rumored to be in the mix to go to Miami. Instead, of course, he goes to San Francisco. So now, Ollie Gordon finds himself as like the biggest back, the healthiest back in Miami. I think that means a ton. And when we talk about him, he's a rookie coming out here. Before Genti had his Heisman campaign, Ollie Gordon was in contention for RB1 overall in this class. Like, if you talked through the 2024 rookie class heading into last college football season, it was Ollie Gordon, Genti, Quinshon Judkins, Trevon Henderson, and then, of course, Ollie Gordon has an awful final year and gets drafted on day 3. Now, that to me sounds a lot like Chuba Hubbard. I think that they both went to Oklahoma State as well, where Chuba Hubbard damn near won a Heisman in his second year, down 3rd year. He goes to the Panthers, and it was actually just a stud anyways. We could see that for Ollie Gordon. I'm telling you, it really would not shock me at this point in time, but that is going to do it for us today. Again, if you want access to the entire spreadsheet where I compare the consensus versus my rankings, that will be over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. If you have a draft coming up here this weekend, make sure you check it out. I have my top 200 rankings tiered, my targets, my fades, my target rounds for every single player. They are freshly updated for the Brian Robinson news as well to make sure you guys are out there winning your drafts this weekend. I will add as well, if you guys like this video and it does well, maybe we'll do the opposite. And I'll tell you guys that by my rankings, I'm way lower on than consensus. Let me know how you feel about that. But as always, subscribe if you're new, leave a like, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze. I used